The front pages this morning have all got stories varying different types of things. The Sun has got the line that says, from Rachel Reeves, "I'm under so much pressure." Apparently she broke down in tears shortly after saying that she was basically under so much pressure. In another meltdown day for Downing Street, following the benefits vote fiasco, TV cameras showed her sobbing on the front benches. It is clearly quite extraordinary of a situation. We're told that it's a personal matter, but we're also told that there was a row between Rachel Reeves and the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle. On the front page of The Times, it says that Starmer failed to back her in the Commons, which also was one of the reasons why she started bursting into tears. She told Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, that she was under so much pressure during a brief altercation on the floor of the Commons. But after what happened, she was said to have spooked the bond market, which at one point was in as much freefall as it was when Liz Truss was having problems. Let's talk to Brendan O'Neill, chief political writer at Spiked, because this is really reaching epic proportions now. Brendan, very good morning to you.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Yeah, very well indeed. Much better than it is for the people in Downing Street, who should be celebrating a year in power, but in fact having a pretty miserable time. And I think, from most people's perspective, what we saw yesterday in Prime Minister's questions was quite unprecedented, even for the bear pit of the House of Commons.
It was, yes. And, you know, some people are saying that she's going through a personal matter. I don't personally buy that. I think there's something much more political to it.
Yeah.
But that image of her blubbing like a baby in the Commons, that is going to stick on this government, because that is proof that this government is emotionally incontinent, morally incapable, and politically rubbish. That is what we now know about this government. It was a fiasco in the Commons yesterday.
Yeah.
The person in charge of this nation's finances crying her eyes out, Keir Starmer babbling on and giving concession after concession. This is a government that is out of control. 1 year in, they have demonstrated that they are arguably one of the worst governments this country has ever had.
I think it's hard to disagree with that, isn't it? Because everything they do, I mean, I've got a piece in The Sun today about, you know, the year that Keir Starmer has had. And when I was writing it, you sort of forget about all the things that have happened, all the way back to Lord Alley and the free spectacles and the free clothes and the mystery of the Covent Garden penthouse flat and who used it and when it was used and what it was used for and what was going on back at the home of Keir Starmer. Meanwhile, you know, you've had all of the scandal around the various cabinet ministers that have had to resign, the various MPs that have had to go. You know, almost everything they've touched has turned to something not very nice.
Well, I'll have to read your piece, because I had the exact same thought. You can forget what this government has done or not done. You can forget all of its rubbishness because there's so much of it.
Yeah.
In the year that they've been in power, there's all those things you've just mentioned. We've had riots. We've had new forms of tyranny with people being put in jail for tweets and Facebook posts. We've had concession after concession. Keir Starmer is constantly climbing down on the issues points he's made or statements he's made or policies he promised to pursue. You know, remember Thatcher when she said the lady is not for turning. Now, people may have been in favour of Thatcher or against Thatcher. That's not my business. But the point is, she could stand her ground. She knew what it meant to be a leader. She knew what it meant to run a country and to run a government. Keir Starmer, it's even insulting, I think, to call him a weather vane, because at least the weather vane serves the purpose of telling you know, which way the wind is blowing. Right. This guy is just a moral coward and a political amateur, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And the thought of them, do you remember they said when we get back into power, it will be the adults coming back into normalcy, coming back to British politics? It's been the complete opposite of that.
Well, it has been a complete opposite. And just to prove that they are indeed still kind of student activists working, pretending to be MPs, 9 Labour MPs voted against banning Palestine Action yesterday, including Zara Sultana, who I think was shouting in the House of Commons. Let's have a look at this.
I stand with the millions of people that oppose genocide, because I am one of them. I oppose the blood-soaked hands of this government trying to silence us. So I say this loudly and proudly on Wednesday, the 2nd of July, 2025, we are all Palestine. Order!
No, we're not.
Yeah, we are all Palestine Action. I mean, no, we're not could be heard. I mean, technically speaking, Palestine Action are now a prescribed terrorist group, I think, aren't they, by law?
You know, Sarah Sultana, that is disgusting, because I want to explain to some of your listeners and viewers something about Palestine Action. We all know that they invaded the RAF grounds, and that's what caused this huge controversy. That's a very serious matter indeed. But what people tend to forget is that at the end of May, so we're just talking a few weeks ago, 3 Palestine Action people in black masks invaded a Jewish business in Stamford Hill, which is a very Jewish part of London, smashed it to smithereens, sprayed it with red paint, including the mezuzah on the front door, which Jewish people put on the front door to remind them of their faith. They splashed that in red paint too. And they struck terror into the heart of the Jewish community in Stamford Hill. The people of Stamford Hill said they felt terrified. They said it reminded them of the pogroms in Europe in the 1930s and 40s. Kristallnacht, for example, which literally means, the night of broken glass. Palestine Action visited a mini Kristallnacht on the Jews of Stamford Hill just a few weeks ago. So when Zara Sultana stands up and says, I am Palestine Action, we're all Palestine Action, she's not just aligning herself with protests against genocide, as she stupidly calls Israel's war. Yeah. She's aligning herself with a group that smashed up a Jewish-owned business in Britain in 2025. That is repulsive, and that is anti-Semitic.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's also an organisation which is very shadowy when it comes to where the money comes from, because it's not a charity. It appears to be a privately run concern. And the Home Office, I think, even just as recently as last week, was suggesting that they think it might be being funded, at the very least, by the Iranian regime.
It's the whole thing about Palestine Action is so shady. The whole movement, the whole idea of it, the actions they carry out, there's, industrial levels of smugness. These are the most self-righteous plonkers in this country. Yeah. They are really, really a nauseating movement. And I think what you have with groups like Palestine Action, it is basically plummy young white saviors who imagine that it falls on their shoulders to save the poor brown people of Gaza from evil Israel. They have this fairy tale version of politics. They have this fairy tale version of the Middle East. It bears no relation whatsoever to reality. It doesn't reflect the fact that this war was started by Hamas when it sent 6,000 armed men to invade Israel and rape and murder Jews. It doesn't take into account any of that. It just has this ridiculous narrative that says Israel is responsible for everything and Gaza is the innocent party. That's not real politics. No. That's just self-righteousness dressed up as a political campaign.
Well, it's like Glastonbury all year round, isn't it? I mean, that's what we're facing now with these morons. And just as we're watching the latest sort of outcry from them when they were doing their demonstration in Trafalgar Square the other day, you can see them all wearing these, tax the rich T-shirts. It's all the same crowd. It's the kind of Extinction Rebellion professional, mummy drives us into the train station in a Volvo, and then we come up to London and demonstrate around for the day. And I mean, I actually heard some of them being interviewed by Theo Usherwood, who was down there a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying, there were some very plummy voices saying things like, well, we're okay, we're quite rich, so we can probably afford good lawyers, but not everybody can. And it's almost like it's a summer sort of pastime for them.
Absolutely. This is not a grassroots movement. This is a movement of largely upper middle class people who are time rich, who've got all the time in the world on their hands, who want to demonstrate their virtue to the world, who've latched onto this issue, who've culturally appropriated the Palestine issue to give themselves a moral boost, who are just, they're in it for themselves and they pretend that they're saving the world, but actually they're not. It's the omnicause, isn't it? It's that constant search for the one cause through which these people might gain a sense of purpose in their lives. A few years ago, it was climate change. Now it's Israel-Palestine, and you have to wear the keffiyeh around your neck to show everyone how beautiful and wonderful you are. So next week, it will be something else. They're constantly looking around for the issue through which they might signal their virtue to the world. It's such a lame form of political activism.
It really is. But as we've said, the fact that 9 Labour MPs have voted against banning them tells you everything you need to know about the state of Labour as well.
Well, let's not forget that a few years back, someone reminded us of this online yesterday, some Labour people voted against banning Al-Qaeda. This is the kind of world we live in. There's currently a movement amongst some so-called pro-Palestine activists. There's currently a movement to de-proscribe Hamas. They want Hamas to no longer be prescribed as a terrorist organization in order that they might express support for it in public. You know, I think this week has been a mask-off week for the so-called pro-Palestine movement, because we've seen them chanting for death to the IDF at Glastonbury. We've seen that chant taken up on the streets across Britain over the past few days. We now see them rallying behind Palestine Action, a movement that has carried out grotesque and I would say anti-Jewish actions. This is, you know, this is their helter-skelter week. This is the week in which the kind of craziness, the derangement, and even the tinge of violence in this movement really became apparent. And it worries me about, you know, I'm worried about Jewish security, how Jews in this country will feel when they see these idiots running riot and defaming the Jewish state morning, noon and night.
I know. It is absolutely extraordinary how we've got to this point in this country, in this day and age. Shocking. Brendan, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Brendan O'Neill there, Chief Political Writer at Spike.